Rather, Citroën had given the 15.6 a hydro-pneumatic suspension as part of its larger plan to introduce the traction's replacement, which would have hydro-pneumatic suspension on all four wheels. By the time the last traction left the factory, that successor had been exciting controversy on the French automotive scene for 2 years. The DS19, once again masterminded by André Lefebvre, was radically different from every other car on the road in the mid-1950s, both in terms of the styling and the technology that it offered. For example, American cars of the day were giant rounded boxes with gaudy chrome, like this 55 Buick. The futuristic DS, on the other hand, was shaped for minimum aerodynamic drag, with the radiator below the midline of the gracefully curved bonnet. Inside, the dashboard was dominated by a unique single-spoke steering wheel.
The aesthetics of the DS model, and my first Citroen was a DS, was quite controversial, polarizing almost. That is, there were people who thought it was probably the ugliest car they'd ever seen. There were other people who thought it was a beautiful, streamlined object. And partly it's a matter of getting used to, and I think that what we've seen in the years since it was introduced is that more and more cars have come to look like the DS than otherwise.
The DS19 was Citroën's rocket to the space age, fired 2 years before the launch of the Sputnik. In fact, the aesthetics of the car were so compelling and unusual that the DS shell was exhibited in museums. For those less excited about the looks of the DS, there were other attractions.
I have to admit that the DS, when it first came out, I thought it was hideous. But after driving it, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I was flabbergasted by what the car could do. And I forgot the looks.
What impressed engineers like Bill and John was the advanced performance the DS offered. The heart of the car's new technology was quite literally a pump, which powered the suspension, steering, semi-automatic transmission, and the first disc brakes ever fitted on a French production automobile. The self-leveling hydro-pneumatic suspension let the wheels track the road like the needle in a record groove. This gave the car impressive road handling and made the ride uniquely smooth and comfortable, both on the highway and on rough country roads. It even gave the DS a variable clearance, which the driver could change at the flip of a lever. The system worked by connecting each wheel to a piston. Each of the 4 pistons pressed on the liquid in a suspension sphere, which then compressed and decompressed a gas in the sphere. The pressure was shifted from sphere to sphere by a system of valves in order to keep the car level at all times.
The hydraulic pumps generates pressure, which is accumulated in this steel sphere and then distributed to the front suspension, which one element for this wheel is here, and this element for the opposite wheel is here, and we have 2 identical spheres for the rear axle as well.
The self-leveling ability even made it possible for the DS to operate with 1 wheel missing.
At Kyalami, S.A. Mirror takes a look at a ballet on 3 wheels, the wheel and turn of a Citroën cavalcade that spells out safety.
When traveling on all 4 wheels, the 1.9-litre engine adapted from the Traction Avant produced 70 brake horsepower and speeds of up to 85 miles an hour. Whatever anxiety Citroën managers might have felt about introducing yet another revolutionary and controversial car was immediately relieved. The DS19 was an instant success. 750 of the sleek new cars were ordered in the first 45 minutes of its debut at the 1955 Paris Motor Show. 12,000 by the end of the first day. As the years went by, the DS gradually came to be identified with France in almost the same way as Camembert cheese and the Eiffel Tower. And the DS Pleasing form and aerodynamic function followed each other like yin and yang. For the first time, car design and a marketing campaign had been created together to attribute an image to the vehicle from the day the project was born. It became the car of French presidents like René Coty, who toured the countryside in DS-19 motorcades.
Précède l'imposant cortège du président de la République en visite officielle en Alsace.
In fact, a DS saved the life of President Charles de Gaulle during the 1962 assassination attempt by the ultranationalist Black Hand group. The assassins shot out 2 of the tires, but as this promotional film demonstrates, the DS was able to stop in complete control on only 2 wheels. And the hydro-pneumatic suspension even made it possible to change the blown tires quickly without resorting to a jack. Still, for all the advanced technology, for all the glamour and cachet the DS acquired, it was still a highly unusual and idiosyncratic car. By ignoring the fashions of the day and designing the best car they knew how to build, Citroen's engineers had created an automobile that symbolized Gallic independence.
I think it's fair to say that French car manufacturers have some of the characteristics of a French maitre d' in a very expensive restaurant. You are the customer, but they're not there necessarily to be pleased. You should be pleased just because you're there. That's sort of a Gallic indifference to the customer requirement. But there's a reverse psychology to it. If they thought the cars were that good, it seemed to make the customers think the cars were that good.
But of course, this perpetual drive towards advancing the state-of-the-art meant that Citroën would soon have to improve on the DS-19. The question was, how do you top your best? The DS line was a winner for France in more ways than one. Citroën introduced a less expensive version of the DS called the ID, with the hydraulic system confined to the suspension. When an ID-19 won the Monte Carlo Rally in 1959, Citroën decided the time had come to re-enter the world of motorsports. In 1965, Citroën answered the complaint that the DS-19 was underpowered by introducing the more powerful DS-21. The 21 had an all-new 2.1-liter engine capable of taking the car up to 105 miles an hour, which gave it the winning edge in several Moroccan rallies. Also that year, the DS line would acquire a feature that would become one of its trademarks in the public mind. These distinctive, faired-in, swiveling headlamps. The headlights pivoted partly to compensate for the car's ever-varying attitude due to the automated suspension. They were handy for traversing switchback curves, and their fairing behind glass gave the DS an even more shark-nosed appearance. In 1968, Citroën experienced a round of merger mania. The Italian Fiat company bought a 15% stake in Citroën, despite the protest of the French government. And Citroën bought a majority holding in the Maserati company. The Maserati merger gave Citroën the expertise it needed to complete yet another ambitious and risky venture, the development of a luxury coupe. Within 2 years, the SM was ready for introduction. It was a car of which André Citroën would certainly have approved. The SM was the fastest Citroën ever built, with a 2.7-liter Maserati V6 engine capable of speeds up to 142 miles an hour.
The SM is very much like the DS in that it has a very similar suspension. A lot of the engineering principles are very much the same, very aerodynamic. The principal difference is in the engine, which in the DS is a little bit underpowered. This one, on the other hand, has 3/4 of a Maserati V8 under the hood and is very responsive to the throttle. That just makes it more fun to drive.
Besides its powerful engine, the SM also offered unusual self-centering power steering, along with Citroën's very first 5-speed transmission, and from 1972, electronic fuel injection. A winning competitor from its very first year, the SM represented the apex of Citroën engineering.
The technology they have been using is by concept 50 years old and only now showing up in what we consider domestic vehicles today. The technology is an engineer's dream. Even aircraft don't have quality like this. They left the original extra quality without attempting to cut down on the cost. This is why I feel that when you produce a machine with this quality, it is a prototype. It is not a mass-produced machine.
Indeed, the SM was also the most expensive Citroën ever built, priced at £5,500, in an era when a Cadillac Coupe de Ville cost £4,700. When the gas crisis of the early 70s completely changed the sales environment, the days of the fuel-guzzling SM were numbered. In 1973, Fiat sold its stake in Citroën, and 2 years later, Citroën sold Maserati, marking the end of the line for the SM. Only 13,000 were ever built. 1975 also brought the close of the whole DS line, after 20 years and 1.5 million cars sold. Since then, the company has been acquired by Peugeot, which has had a steadying influence on Citroën's management and fortunes. Citroën has had continuing success over the years, introducing its new lines throughout the world, except in the American marketplace, which they've largely avoided. Those winning lines include the CX, which replaced the DS series, the GS, the AX, the XM, and now the Xantia, among others. They've done well for the company. Their continuing success has, in a sense, vindicated André Citroën's audacious design philosophy.
It certainly was distressing to his company, perhaps to his shareholders, to see so much put on the line. But I think it goes back to who did he pick to carry out his ideas? Who did he pick to execute his ideas? And so maybe it wasn't such a great gamble. If you went to the casinos and knew the croupier was going to be very friendly to you, it's not as much of a gamble there. And in this case, for Citroën, the croupiers were his engineers who did well. I think that instills an ethic in a company, and so probably long after he was gone, the engineers and their disciples who were there continued in the same vein.
André Citroën's chancy approach to car making may not always have been understood or appreciated in its day. But the proof that it was basically sound is that 60-odd years later, John and Bill and millions of other Citroën owners are still enjoying the fruits of André Citroën's daring imagination.
It gave an absolutely constant ride. It was a magic carpet ride. Other cars, you could feel the bumps. You could be shaken about. But with the DS, it was like riding on a magic carpet.
Citroën, right from the start, were eccentric, innovative, and in their marketing have tried to reflect that. So that you get, for example, a DS Safari with a harp, a double bass, a trombone in the back. You get shots of children with balloons with Citroën logos on. You get strange figures with umbrellas walking through Citroën brochures. The whole marketing ploy was to make you amused, to emphasize a particular Gallic charm.
They were very complicated cars, and lots of people were totally frightened of them. It's often been known that these cars have been a plumber's nightmare. A normal car, should we say, may have cost £500 or £600. A Citroën DS would have cost £1,500. It was very expensive.
car did prove to be a success, not only in the private ownership, but in various rallying successes, particularly in the long-distance, rougher rallies, which is a thing that Citroen's can continue to this day.